And guys, welcome back to Trail Tested, and it is December 1st, freezing cold up here in Minnesota. That gives me just a little extra time to go over some things on 2025, show you all my favorite e-bikes of the year, and talk some specs and talk some problems, some issues. Overall, let's just have a good time and check out some of the 2025 bikes Trail Tested of the year. Let's hit it. Alright, first bike up is the Run G300 Pro. This little guy has a straight up direct drive, 6,000 watt motor on the back. It feels more like about a 3,000 watt motor altogether, but nonetheless, this is not a bike. This is a straight up trail bike. It is a legit little pit bike. The suspension was probably the highest point on this bike. I loved it. I was able to hit 50 miles an hour going downhill, down a slight little hill there. Nonetheless, this thing blasted. As with all the laws and everything going on, I wouldn't recommend taking this one onto the roads and doing commuting with it. As like I said, it is just a solid dirt bike all on its own. This was the first 72 volt bike on my channel, which is very sweet of those guys to let me test this bike out. This bike got excellent range. I could not complain on the range at all. I was able to ride it all day and all night on a full battery. That was very good to see. The brakes were pretty dang good, but the thing about the brakes is after about 35 miles an hour, you needed some emergency stops. You really had to pull them in. It'd been nice to see some more upgraded, bigger brakes on there, but nonetheless, very good for just moderate trail riding. Overall, I highly recommend the G300 Pro for anybody that's looking for their first bike, teenagers, or just somebody who wants to get out and cruise around their property. Highly recommended for sure. Alright, up next is the ActFest Core 2.0 Ranger. Alright, this is a nice little step through bike. This thing actually had some good power and some good balance. I had a lot of fun testing this. The handlebars are kind of the cruiser style, kind of more for the old people, not quite my style of handlebars, but a whole lot of fun once I got used to it. And let me tell you, I didn't get any looks going down any public paths, anything on this bike. It was very low key. The brakes, I think they were mechanical. They could have used some serious improvements. The brakes were pretty weak, but I was able to get them to slide around. Overall, this was just a good bike to rip around and have a lot of fun on.
Skitty.
I think my wife enjoyed this bike the most, but hey, what do you know? Alright, next up is the Rover 2.0 by KingBull. Now, I had the most fun jumping and going to the bike parks and hitting the trails with this bike through and through. This was the absolute funnest bike. I love the e-bikes that market themselves as mountain bikes, and they don't ship you any racks, no fenders, no none of that. They spend most of their money on the frame, suspension, motor, and stuff like that, so that's good to see. Now, this bike's coming with full hydraulic brakes, all the goodies that you need. The DNM rear shock did really good on the jumps. The front rake on this bike was very high, so this would be a really good bike for taller people or anybody that's looking to do some downhill riding. Highly recommended. But yeah, it had beautiful paint, and with the Samsung cells, you can't go wrong. Alright, let's dive into a moped style one now. This is the HighKeep K6-T. This bike, I think, is around $800-900 bucks, and it absolutely had the most power for climbing hills out of any bike that I've really tested, next to like the $4,000 E-Cells King's Crown. But nonetheless, this is absolutely the funnest bike that I rode of the year. I love the moped style. The way the seats are laid out, they have that motocross bike seat kind of on there, and you can really sit up or down and position yourself wherever you want on those style of bikes. It was nice that I could control the front wheel drive to all wheel drive. You can kind of control where you want your power. The battery at 15 amp hours is pretty small, but it still got me through my 18 mile, 15 mile test, and I still had a few bars left, and I thought for sure I was going to burn those batteries out. Actually, this is not the K6, this is the MA-T. So this one, opposed to the K6, has much bigger front forks, and you can really feel it. The front forks on this one are about 30% better than the other one, but nonetheless, the bikes are pretty much the same controllers and everything. I do like this company. A lot of their bikes, they pretty much focus just on the moped style, and they just don't have a huge line of folding bikes and all these different types of bikes. So it's cool that they pretty much are focused on these moped style with the dual drives. And I really like the headlights and taillights they integrated. I haven't seen the headlights and taillights on any other bikes. Alright, let's jump into the Run G70 Pro. Now, this is based more of a cargo passenger bike, and it sure was. I was able to fit my wife and my kid on this bike at the same time and go cruise around. I like it a lot. It had good front forks and that suspension. It's kind of got that G60 suspension. It's got kind of more of a pogo effect, but a lot of fun to ride. And this one is a dual battery, so a 35 amp hour total. I think on my test, I think I almost had like 80% left after about 15 miles. So the battery range did very good. The power, it doesn't have the best torque off the line, but the happy runs, pretty much all their bikes have really good mid-range power. That's what they're known for more than likely. All right, next up is the Qife Racer. Now, this is a legit little e-bike. I mean, it's just basically a bicycle with a little hub motor on the back. This was a lot of fun. These are the type of bikes that I really like just because they remind me of growing up and what I used to ride back in the day. It had a thumb throttle, which I really did like. The rear suspension basically did nothing. It was more for looks, but I mean, better than nothing, I guess. It had really good balance. As you can see, I'm hanging a little wheelie right there. Off-road, on-road. I really like this bike, and it was another bike that you didn't get looked at when you were cruising down the trails. Class 1, Class 2, nobody cared. It looked like you're just pedaling a normal bike. All right, next up is the OUIX V8. Now, this bike's a blast. It's another moped style one. It was built pretty well. I was happy with the quality and stuff like that. The wheelbase is short. It's significantly shorter than other bikes. So when you're playing around on the trail and doing wheelies, it's kind of unpredictable, but it makes it feel like you have a lot more power than it does have because of that short wheelbase. But nonetheless, the suspension did me good. This was a hardtail in the rear, which was the first moped style hardtail I got to ride, and I really liked it because 90% of the time the suspension that they put on those bikes, they don't even work anyways, so why not save a little weight and put that on there. And right out of the box, they give you an extra little seat or rear rack to put on, and it's already got some back pegs built on. So very cool. Another 15 amp hour battery. It went through my full test. I still had 2 bars left, so happy with that. Overall, the good old OUIX V8, I give it a thumbs up. All right, next up is the DK300 Pro. Now, this bike was another dual battery bike, so a little bit more on the heavy side, but nonetheless, good to have that range. But the thing is, this thing had awesome handlebars. And because it had it had like an extended rear swing arm like that, this was the most balanced and controlled bike I have tested all year for sure. I loved the way it rode. The only downside I had of this road bike was the seat. The seat was pitched forward, which I simply fixed with a few washers putting up front, and that flattened the seat out. And you kind of have to do that because it was unbearable to ride with that seat pointed down. Yeah, this one had some really good hydraulic brakes, and as you see, I have some eggs on the back. I did a full egg test with that rear rack that they have. It looks sweet with the rack that they give you, and I didn't break a single egg on that test either. Now, I really like the thumb throttle on this bike. I'm starting to like the thumb throttles more and more rather than the quarter twist throttles on bikes. My biggest thing on this bike that I really didn't like was their motor that they had developed. It was Milad's own motor, and it did great 20 to 25 cruising, but this bike had no low-end torque. I really wish it had a little more on torque, and I think a lot of that had to do with that rear swing arm again being extended, and it's a dual battery bike. So if these guys were to put a 1000-watt Bafang in this bike, I think this would be one of my top 10 bikes for sure. Top 5, I should say. All right, next up is the Yolo Life Y20. Yeah, this bike, for how much it was, this is the first bike that I've seen come with straight DOT clear reservoirs for the brakes, which is very sweet, and the brakes worked absolutely great. And the handlebars, this is another bike where they set up the handlebars properly for a moped style. That's how they should be done. I had a lot of fun on this bike. If the rear suspension had more of a dampening on it and it was just those springs, this bike would be superior. The front forks are okay, but the rear is just not as good as it could be, and if it was, this bike would be on the top 3 for sure. Nonetheless, I had a lot of fun with this bike. I rode this bike probably harder than I did any other moped bike because I found this new trail as you see me ripping today, and I got really excited and really put it to it. But nonetheless, the Yolo did absolutely great. Weirdly enough, this is the first company that I did a review for where I didn't hear a single word of feedback from or anything or any shares or nothing, and I hooked those guys up. So, which is just fine with me, just fine. But nonetheless, if you're looking at this bike, reach out to their customer service and make sure that they are still alive, which I hope they are because this bike is pretty sweet, as you can see from the full send. All right, next up is the Anokei A8 Pro Max. This bike is absolutely awesome. This is my type of bike right here. The biggest downfall to this bike is that it got a lot of attention, good attention and a bad attention. I'm pretty much going to have to get a moped plate for this one next year because everybody was looking at me when I was on this one. Didn't matter what type of trail I was on. That being said, this bike, I absolutely love it. This was the bike that made me fall in love with direct drive motors because of how fast this bike actually was, but yet how quiet and silent it was. even for being 130-pound bike. But yes, this was the most expensive bike I tested this year, but they surely had all the receipts and they backed that up with having the most features, biggest brakes, nicest suspension. At least the front suspension was super nice for my weight. And this bike even had like a little Apple Car play out, so you can play some music while you're jamming down the road. Pretty sweet. I absolutely love this bike. Highly recommended. Alright guys, let's wind it down here. Thank you so much for watching today. Obviously I tested a lot more bikes, and these are just some of my favorites that I put together to show you guys. Overall, the bikes that I just showed you today, I had zero issues with them, and but I still own about 80% of those bikes, and I still ride them as much as I can. Now, when it comes to a bike that I would recommend just about to anybody, whether they have experience or no experience, it's the KingBull Jumper Go. The DNM, I just love that DNM rear suspension. I love how they do the 4-link setups on these types of bikes. And it's a step through with that front fork. It's got like a triple tree front fork kind of, so kind of like that motorcycle front fork. This bike I absolutely love. This is the bike that I ride as much as I can. It is the smoothest bike I have. It's not the fastest, but it's got great torque from that Bafang motor. And again, Samsung cells, you can't go wrong. So hey guys, thanks a lot for watching this video. If you guys have any questions, please put them down below. I always like to answer the questions. Nonetheless, hey everybody, stay trail happy guys. Peace.